Do you feel like a passenger in your life, or out of control, or there's things that you want to set and work towards, like goals, but yet you keep sabotaging yourself? Things keep getting in the way. There's an inner conflict. Then Roberto Assagioli has the solution for you. And the hint is here. Because often we're trying to cultivate awareness, consciousness, becoming more aware of our problems. But often people say, I'm aware of it, what do I do? Or I have too much awareness. But what they don't fundamentally have access to is the will. And that is the cure to your ailment, to your disease and suffering. And so that's what we're going to look at today. And simply put, if consciousness is this plain blank awareness, will is the capacity to direct, to steer in a particular direction. So if we don't have access to will, maybe we're like an animal, right? We have an instinct, an impulse. We're drawn to a smell and we follow it. We're hungry and we eat. But the will is the capacity to withhold, to pause, or to redirect. So there's anger, right? And you can redirect that anger into something. You can either push it down and repress it, you can either express it, or you can transmute it. So there's the capacity to work with energies within our psyche. Without the will, we don't have that capacity. And so what is it that takes us over in this moment? And what we need to do is look towards John Rowen for a moment to get an idea of what takes us over. He describes subpersonalities, and his definition is a semi-permanent and semi-autonomous region of the personality capable of acting as a person. Simply put, that means the subpersonalities within us that have their own drives, own wants, own needs, own desires, that are sometimes in conflict with another part of us that's trying to act in another particular direction. So think about this for a moment, because I'm sure you know very well the feeling of inner conflict. So, you want to go to the gym. And you want to go to the gym because you want to get fit. You want to get healthy. You want to work out. You want to get in shape. You just want to feel good. You want to feel vibrant. And yet, you find yourself on the 7th episode of your favorite Netflix series, and you can't stop. And you can't get off the sofa, and you can't get to the gym. If we just have the awareness of that, then we just simply are kind of possessed by whatever semi-autonomous subpersonality comes in that is more dominant at the moment. For a moment, let's turn to another quote from A Manual of Principles and Techniques, Roberto Assagioli. We are dominated by everything which our self becomes identified. We can dominate and control everything from which we disidentify ourselves. In this principle lies the secret to our enslavement or of our liberty. Every time we identify ourselves with a weakness, a fault, a fear, or any personal emotional drive, we limit and paralyze ourselves. Every time we admit, I am discouraged or I am irritated, we become more and more dominated by depression or anger. We have accepted those limitations. We have ourselves put on our chains. If instead in the same situation we say, a wave of discouragement is trying to submerge me, or an impulse of anger is attempting to overpower me, then in that way we can find a level of freedom. Because there is a subtle distance in the way in which we relate to the thing that is taking us over. And so John Rowen says they are semi-autonomous and semi-permanent. And so if we just relate to this on the surface level, then we think this is something we can simply push down and get rid of. But there's a semi-permanence there. So it means all we're doing is it's like a beach ball, right? Ever as a kid, did you grab hold of a beach ball or one of them surfboards and you try pushing it down underwater, but it has a real buoyancy, right? And so as you try and force it under the water, it always tries to pop back up to the surface. And in the same way, these subpersonalities are the same. We might be able to suppress them for a temporary while, just about get them underwater, but there's a huge force that's trying to make it erupt again. And the semi-autonomous nature of this subpersonality simply means that it has a level of autonomy in and of itself. This is why we don't feel in control of our lives, and this is really important, because We might hold ourselves as, okay, right, yes, I'm the one in charge, but we notice these things take us over. You know, you find yourself in the fridge, you find yourself in the cookie bag, you find yourself not making it to the gym, you find yourself stuck in front of the sofa, you find yourself in certain addictive patterns, you find yourself screaming at a partner, you find yourself doing all of these different things that you wish you didn't and that you actually desire to stop, because they are semi-autonomous. So they have a level of autonomy in and of themselves, which means that if they have a really strong charge, they have a strong amount of libido within them, then they can override your ego for the moment. And as Assagioli said, you identify with it. You believe yourself to be that subpersonality. You get hooked in and you see through its eyes. So you see through anger, you see through lust, you see through the hunger of the craving of the sugar and the desire to go towards the cookie bag. And you feel torn in all of these different directions. And so what we need to do is we need to begin to build a level of awareness in order to first understand what is happening, because the awareness becomes a foundational aspect to then engage with the will. And we're going to get into something regarding the will, because most people think they can white knuckle it, right? They think they can use strong will. And if you notice, even if you abdicate the thing that you're trying to engage with, so let's say you do drag yourself to the gym, or let's say you do work through and finish that project, or you resist the cookies, whatever it may be, you notice you're exhausted regardless, right? You're exhausted because there is a tension, there is a fight between these different aspects of yourself. And so willpower simply isn't enough, because willpower simply means repressing one thing, pushing one beach ball under the water and allowing the other beach ball to emerge for the moment. So I want my gym beach ball to emerge, I want my kind of sloth to go down and get repressed, and then they constantly alternate, and you constantly expend energy keeping one of them under the surface. And so that's why, regardless of if you win the battle and you don't eat the cookie, or you do go to the gym, you still feel a level of psychic kind of exhaustion. You still feel tired because you're repressing something. You're not meeting something fundamental within yourself. So that's an idea of why the strong will in that case, as Assagioli calls it, becomes willpower. And so first of all, let's try and understand the 4 stages of awareness, and then we'll look into something called skillful will, which is what we need in order to balance this willpower, which is strong will, in order to direct the energies more intelligently so that we don't become exhausted. We don't feel this tearing apart and in a conflict. So it happens in 4 simple stages. Think of an example within your mind right now. Maybe there's something you wanted to say to someone. Maybe there's a habit that you didn't want to do. Let's stick with the cookies. I used to have a bad sugar addiction, fortunately under control right now. But cookies, donuts, whatever it is, absolute nightmare. I couldn't help myself. If it's in the house, I'm screwed. So, the first stage, you have no awareness. And with no awareness, there comes no will. In this stage, you find yourself you just found yourself in the cupboard, and you've just found yourself eating these cookies. Simple. The second stage, you find yourself reflecting a few hours later, oh, I said I was on a diet, and I've just realized I ate 5 donuts a few hours ago. What the hell happened there? And so a little bit of awareness begins to come in. There's a little bit of reflection and a question. How did that happen? The third stage, you find yourself in the cupboard. You see yourself reaching for the donuts. You find yourself not wanting to eat the donuts. And yet, the impulse is so strong, you can't resist it, you can't fight it. The semi-autonomous nature, the force behind this subpersonality, this craving is too strong. and you eat the donuts reluctantly. The fourth stage is that you reach into the cupboard, you grab the donuts, and you have a choice. You have a choice and you have the freedom to either have one or to put them back. But it doesn't feel like you're kind of passively watching yourself do it because you have the awareness but no will, but you actually have the will engaged. You have the capacity to do something else with it. There's many choices you could make. You could even decide to throw them in the bin, give them to someone else. And so you open up to a level of choice and flexibility. It's no longer compulsive, it's no longer reactive, but you can respond to the moment in a different way. And the trick there with that choice and that flexibility is what Assagioli calls skillful will. And so let's grab a quote. The other mistake which is prevalent today is to abdicate the will. Urges, drives, and desires are allowed to happen without any regulation or consistent direction. In such a situation, the function that is strongest at the moment will capture one's attention and express itself, and in doing will inhibit or repress all the other less powerful functions. This produces inner conflict and stress, reduced effectiveness through the dispersal of energies, and potentially harmful reactions within oneself and others. And so there's that exhaustive kind of willpower function of repressing, or simply just allowing it to happen. You know, just, I surrender, just do what you want. And then you find yourself just constantly pulled in different directions. But strong will, that desire to kind of willpower yourself out of a situation, to resist, to fight, is kind of like being on a sailboat, but you're rowing. You're exhausting, you're using a lot of energy. But the skillful will is simply the capacity to understand the circumstances you're in, understand and have knowledge of what is happening, and to use the energy, the libido, to use the wind to carry you in a different way. So you put up the sails. Simple. The wind's blowing, you put up the sails of the boat, you grab the steering wheel, you allow the wind to carry you. And so you allow these psychological energies to work in your favor in some capacity. And so you can direct the energy in a different way. And I touched on earlier, for example, the idea of transmutation. So anger comes in. Instead of screaming at the person like you might always do, there's a capacity to do something with it. Do you want to bang the drums? Do you want to create some art? Do you want to sculpt something? Do you want to simply carry that energy into a project, to use that energy force as a way to kind of mobilize you towards something? Or do you have to cultivate a level of self-knowledge to skillfully meet something differently? For example, the other day I was going to make a video. That day I was feeling particularly foggy. Willpower says, push through, fight it, make the video anyway. And I did try once. And I'm telling you, it wasn't good. I was not clear. I didn't have a bloody clue what I was saying. The fog had kind of fully descended on me. And so I recognized this really isn't at least the moment. Might not be not the day, but it's at least not the moment. There's something really in the way here. And trying to white knuckle through, especially for a creative project and an idea, useless, right? It's not going to happen. So, in this case, I recognized there was a lack of sleep. So I decided, today's not the day. I'm going to direct the energy onto a lighter task. I'm going to plan a different video, which became this video. The next day, I wake up, first take, done, posted. It was my last video. Simple as that, but white knuckling, pushing through, is repressing and fighting and stressing. And you can see the different ways in which this happens. Maybe you need to go outside, you need to go for a breather, you need fresh air, you need some sun, you need to regulate, you need to calm, you need to do some box breathing. You need to put on some music, you need to do something else. Either way, through simply pushing and fighting and struggling and strong willing, trying to dominate and stranglehold yourself, doesn't work. That's the exhaustive approach. So it's important to understand that the will is developed. And in modern current culture, with all of this consumerism and the attention economy, where literally all of these apps and applications are psychologically designed to take energy from you, to keep you attached, to keep you hooked, to keep you manipulated, to keep you moving from one thing to another, our attention span, our capacity to will is degrading. We have things that do things for us. We don't even have to think for ourselves with AI anymore. We don't even have to read a book. We can get a summary, for example. All of these things, life is becoming increasingly easier, but as a result, our will is atrophying. So it's almost like a muscle. It needs working. It needs engaging. It's like in meditation, right? You start off with 5 minutes and you're screaming, but eventually 10, 15, 20, up to an hour, you can sit there. You can keep that one pointed, focused, directive energy on the meditation. Same with reading. Maybe you can only read for 20 minutes. Then you build up to a few hours. Perhaps you're trying to do a project, but your attention is being pulled here and there. And so there's these different things you can do. Strong will, for example, is very simply put. You're studying, you're trying to work through something, your phone keeps lighting up. Strong will says, let's just fight through this urge to keep checking the phone. Skillful will means that you leave your phone completely out of your office and you engage the work where that phone isn't there to distract you. You can do something else. You can approach it differently. And so there's the 4 phases that happen where you're not aware, you become aware later, then you become aware in the moment, but you have no will, you have no capacity to change and redirect the energies. Then you open up to choice in the 4th level, where you can then redirect the energies, engage in a different way. For now, as a task, as a challenge, simply begin to reflect on where you get caught. What areas of your life do you feel like you have each of these different stages of your will? Where do you feel more open, more available and engaging in the world? Where do you feel more stuck? What conflicts do you have? Reflect on this, be curious. Because building that awareness is the first stage. Because the individual that's completely identified and possessed by the semi-autonomous nature of the subpersonality doesn't have the choice, it just happens to them. They're almost like a victim to their own inner psychology. So first of all, building the reflective function. Where do I get stuck? Where is that thing I'd say I do and I end up doing the opposite? And to begin to build and reflect on it more and more. And as you do that, eventually you realize 2 hours becomes 5 minutes. You realize 5 minutes after, oh, I just had a donut. I said I was going to go to the gym. Now I'm having a donut. Now I'm stuck on the sofa watching Netflix. And then you see it in the moment. And that's how you begin to work your way towards it. And a skillful will. It takes practice. It takes a level of strength training. Assagioli literally would make people do pointless tasks. He would say, you see that sofa over there? I want you to stand on it. Stand on that sofa for 5 minutes. And you're going to feel silly. You're going to feel stupid. You're going to feel like an idiot. Why the hell am I going to stand in front of all of these people or you on a sofa and look so daft? And that's the point, right? It has just died, but we are at the end anyway. So skillful will in action. I'm engaging. I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to panic. You stand on the sofa, but you feel the inner urges. You feel the fight, and you feel the desire to get down. But you stay up there. You stand up there, and that's a very simple way to begin to exercise and build the will in a small micro step way. Individuals, for example, that fear leaving their house because they have so much anxiety, that's when the will has atrophied so much. There's almost a fear of engaging it. They can't engage it. They collapse internally. And so simply stand on the sofa, stand on the table, say that thing to that person that you want to say is an exercise of the will. It is engaging with your capacity to almost work through that struggle and work towards the outcome that you want. So good luck on your venture. This video is over. The light has told me it is over. I still have some coaching slots, some one-to-one coaching slots. Please look in the description to see that. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.